Church Growth Unleashed, diving into all things leadership and church growth. Provide the help, encouragement, insights that you need along the journey of growing yourself as a leader and your ministry. Hey, welcome back to the Church Growth Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Danny Anderson, and this is a podcast for all things church growth, church leadership, and so if you're a ministry leader, pastor, this is the podcast for you. Hey, I'm so excited today because today we're going to be taking a deep dive into creating a robust, a strong serve team culture at your church. And so that's what you need, and that's what I need to grow a church. If you watched last month's podcast, I had our special guest on with us. His name is Rich Birch, and Rich wrote a couple books. I love this one called The Church Growth Flywheel, which is a fantastic book. We didn't talk about this last time, but we talked about his new book called Creating or Unlocking Your Church's Invite Culture. Fantastic book. I encourage you to pick it up. But something Rich said last month really stuck with me, and we talked about it a little bit briefly. But I wanted to take the concept that he introduced to us last week called the 1-to-3 ratio, and I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive on that. If you watched last month, Rich talked about this idea that your serve team, you might call your impact team or your dream team. We call ours our impact team. It's basically our volunteer team. He said that your volunteer team is, if you're growing, is 1/3 of your weekend attendance. He calls it the 1-to-3 ratio. In the book, he says this. He says, if you grow the number of people actively volunteering at your church, you will grow your church. He says volunteer growth precedes church growth, not the other way around. And I got to thinking about that, like, man, I've always thought that if we grow our weekend attendance, then everything else will grow with it. He actually says that it's the opposite, that if you grow your serve team, your volunteer culture, then your weekend attendance will grow. And so I'm like, well, why is that? And he says in the book, he says, when you move more people to the level of loving the church enough to give back their time through serving, they're more likely to invite their friends. In other words, they feel more ownership of the church and they want their friends to be part of it. So it completely makes sense. So I've shared that with my teams in the last month, like, hey, we've got to kind of sort of adjust our quarterly goals and include, growing our impact team even more so that our weekend attendance can grow. And so I want to share a little bit in this podcast, actually quite a lot of it, of what we do at Emmanuel Church to grow our serve culture here, what we call our impact team. And there's basically 3 big ideas I want to share with you. You can take these, make them your own, work them into your church, and hopefully see some growth on the weekend as well. So the first thing that we've done at our church is to teach on it Sunday morning, to preach a sermon series on the concept of being on the serve team or serving. And so what we've done in the past is we've done series like Grab a Towel, where we did 4 weeks on what it looks like to be a servant. And we looked at the passage in John chapter 13 where Jesus is, they're sitting down having a meal, and Jesus washes his disciples' their feet. He literally grabs a towel that was wrapped around him and washes their feet and dries their feet. And in that series, we gave away literally thousands of towels, and we challenged people to become a towel bearer and to use their gift to serve, to move the local church forward. And so when you teach on it, it really pushes down the value of serving in the entire church. And so if you look back on our podcast, you probably could find that series called Grab a Towel. And so I would encourage you, if you're a lead pastor and you haven't done an entire series on that, teach on it, preach on it, bring all the illustrations, all the passages that deal with serving into your sermons and push it down deep into the culture of your church through your preaching. That's number 1. Number 2, make it easy to join your impact team. Give people an easy on-ramp. So many times in churches, it's People don't even know how do I get involved? How do I join the serve team? What's the process? It's kind of a mystery sometimes. It's your job as the lead pastor or the executive pastor to make it very, very simple for people to go from sitting in those seats to getting onto the serve team. So here's how we do it as a church. About once a quarter, we do this event called Impact Team Night. I'm going to share a little bit more about what that looks like in a second. But part of Impact Team Night is this section called Impact 101. And this is where people who are not currently serving can come to Impact Team Night, and when the time is right, they break off and they go to Impact 101. Now, during Impact 101, it's sort of a small little, 45-minute class. And what happens there is there's a simple greeting. There's the people who are leading Impact 101. They share their story about how they moved from being in the seats to serving. And then they go through the process. It's about an 8-minute process of going through the DISC assessment. Then they take another 8 minutes and explain that, because they want people to understand what their giftings are and where they might fit. After the DISC assessment, I know we're kind of going deep here, but they do a verbal tour of all of the different options that are on the table for people to serve based on their specific gift set. That takes about 15 minutes. Then they're issued a connection card where they can take that card and they can fill out what their first option would be, like, hey, based on the DISC assessment and the verbal tour, here's where I would maybe like to serve. And then they also put a second option on there as well. And then after the connection card, they are given an opportunity to do a shadow day, where they basically come in on a Sunday or through the week, whatever that specific service opportunity offers, the time, and they do a shadow and they see if they like it. And if they do the shadow and they really like it, there's a background check that's executed, and if all of that comes back clear, then they can begin serving. They get a T-shirt and they are on the Impact team and they can start serving. And so there's got to be a very clear, very easy way for people to join your serve team if you want to build up that culture and build up your Impact team in order to grow your church. So number one, teach on it. Number two, make it easy to join. And then number three, value people. Value people. Here's what I've noticed. Our church, other churches, we really struggle with this one, because there's so many things that need to be done. If your church is like ours, we're always short people, especially in the children's ministry and the kids ministry. And it's really tough to take the time that's necessary to make people feel valued. And because we don't take the time to do that, we often rush it, and we're just asking people to fill slots. And in the long run, if you do that long enough, people feel taken advantage of, they feel used, and it creates a very, very poor culture. So if you want to build your culture, your Impact Serve Team culture, you really have to take the time to value people. In the Law of Connection, John Maxwell's book, The 21 Laws of Leadership, it's the 10th law. He calls it the Law of Connection. And he says it like this. He says, before you ask for a hand, you have to touch a heart. It's so powerful. Before you ask someone to help, you have to touch their heart, which means you have to connect with them, which means you have to value them. So here's some simple ways that we try to do that. We are not perfect at it by any means. We have to actually get better at these things, but here's how we try to do that. I mentioned Impact Team Night. That's the first way we do it. About once a quarter, we do this event called Impact Team Night. Impact 101 is part of that. But most of the people that come to Impact Team Night are already serving. And so they come in, they go to their specific campus, and when they walk in, there's food, there's social time, there's usually a theme to create a vibe, there's maybe a game. And so for the first 20, 30 minutes, there's just social time, which people need. They need to connect and see who they're serving with. And so there's a relational connection there. Shortly after that, there's a time where they gather to worship, and they have some corporate worship together as an Impact team at their specific campus. After the worship time, the campus pastor steps in, and he gives about a 15 or 20-minute inspirational message to encourage to say thank you, to show appreciation, and that's important that they hear from their campus pastor. Now, if you're not a multi-site church, that would be you. You'd step up as the lead pastor or executive pastor, and you would provide that encouragement and instruction for about 15, 20 minutes. After that, the teams break up into their specific areas. The worship team goes to one space. The children's ministry volunteers go to another place. The tech people go here, and they receive area-specific training and to get better at their specific job. And then after the training, they're free to go, and the entire night lasts about 2 hours. And so it's one of the major ways that we try to value our impact team by doing that once a quarter. Usually ends up being about 5 times per year. And that also includes Impact 101. Now, you might be thinking, is that the only way people can, join the impact team? Impact 101 is the primary way, but anyone can join at any time by doing what we would call a one-on-one 101, where they just have a meeting at a coffee shop with one of our staff members, and they go through that process I shared earlier, but they just do it one-on-one if they cannot make an impact team night. So value the people by providing opportunities for them to have social time, worship together, and connect and hear some inspiration. The second way that we value them is by never missing an important day. This takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of intentionality, which is what is required to develop a great serve team. What do I mean by never miss an important day? Birthdays, absolutely. They need to get a card, a text message, some sort of acknowledgement to say happy birthday. That's low-hanging fruit. Any type of anniversary in their life. Understand, is it a wedding anniversary? Is it an anniversary of being on the impact team for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Make a big deal about that. Send a card, send a text. Our team even gives out gifts depending on how long a person has served on the impact team. Valentine's Day, another great opportunity to do something a little bit special for your impact team with a little note. Father's Day, absolutely do something special for the impact team on Easter, and then also on Christmas. So for Christmas at our church, we give each person who serves the weekend at a Christmas service, we give them a special gift. And it's not like a crazy awesome gift. It's just a small gift to say, hey, we really appreciate you taking time out of your Christmas schedule to serve on the weekend to see people come to Christ and grow in Christ. And so value your people by never missing an important day. And by the way, those anniversaries could be anniversaries that involve the loss of a child. It's not always positive anniversaries, but it's anything that is important to that person. Make a big deal about it on that particular day. So Impact Team Night, never miss an important day. This third one I think is a lot of fun. We do it every year. We call it our Impact Team Party. Once a year, we throw a gigantic party for our entire impact team. Now, we have about 2,500 people on our impact team. They don't all come. That would be madness. Usually, it's around 600 or 700 people that show up, but we throw a big party for them. Whoever shows up, we feed them. We have fun. There's a theme. We play games. We do pretty much a service for them in the sanctuary where there's hosts and there's comedy, and then there's a message, and we just celebrate the heck out of them. We let them know how special they are. One of my favorite parts of the Impact Team Party is the MVP Award, which we give out. We make a huge deal about it. Years ago, we had a young girl in our Impact team. Her name was Sarah Kish. She tragically died in a car accident. She was on our impact team, and so we call it our Sarah Kish Award. And every year we nominate and vote on one of our impact team members, and they come up and they receive the Sarah Kish Award. And it's just a big deal. It's a lot of fun, and people feel incredibly valuable. So, Impact Team Night. Never miss an important day. Impact Team Party, throw a big party for them. And then this last one, and this one we're actually really struggling with right now. We're kind of revamping it a little bit. What I would call it is systematize a monthly personal touch. Systematize a monthly personal touch. What does that mean? That means that once a month, your staff, each one of your staff members have an impact team, have people under them that serve. Once a month, at least once a month, there just needs to be a personal, hey, how are you doing? It can come through a text message. It can come through a note. It can come through a face-to-face coffee, sit down, a lunch. Just some sort of personal touch to say, hey, I acknowledge you. How's it going? Things are going on in your life. Are you doing okay? I want to say thanks again for serving, and just that personal touch, because as John Maxwell said, if you first touch a heart before you ask for a hand. People want to feel valued. They don't want to feel used. They don't want to feel like they don't want to see your phone call or a text message from your staff member, and the only thing that is on that phone is, hey, can you make it at 11 o'clock? We're short somebody. Can you jump in? Hey, we need somebody. If that's the only form of communication that they're getting, eventually they are going to feel taken advantage of and used. And so I was just talking to our director who oversees our impact team, and she actually got a message from somebody at our church that said, hey, I don't mind serving when you ask me, because I feel like we have a relationship and you value me, but there's some other people on the staff that the only time I ever hear from them is when they need me. And so I usually say no when they text me or call. But when you text or call, I say yes, because we have a relationship. What a huge insight. And so we as a team are trying to do better about systematizing personal monthly touches. What does that mean? That means that you sit down with your staff and you create a system. Maybe it's just a simple Excel spreadsheet with all the names of the people on your impact team in your area, and when you send them a contact, you put a check next to their name, and there's 12 months, and you have to make a personal contact, and each month all the boxes have to be checked that you reached out to that person and touched that person. Here's what Maxwell said in the book. He said, the stronger the connection between the follower and the leader, the more likely they will be loyal to the vision and be willing to lend a hand. That is a powerful idea. The stronger the relationship between your staff, between you and the serve team, the more likely they're going to be loyal to the vision and be willing to give time, energy, and their gifts to fulfill the vision of the church. And so if you're a lead pastor today, here's what I would say to you. This requires your attention. This requires your preaching. This requires your energy if you want to grow that impact team. And why would we want to grow the serve team? It's real simple. Rich Birch said, if you want to grow your church, grow your impact team. It's the 1-to-3 ratio, right? Instead of focusing on growing the weekend attendance, let's focus on growing the serve teams, and then the weekend attendance will follow that. That is gold. That is an idea that I've been thinking about for the last month. Like, okay, how do we get better at this? So I know we don't have it all figured out as a church. We're still learning. Man, if you want to add comments to this, add your comments there. And there's things I still need to learn as well. But I hope I gave you some really good ideas today to build up and make your volunteer culture a little bit more robust and a little bit stronger so that your church can grow. Hey, I want to make mention real quick before we bounce off. If you haven't picked up my new book called Church Growth Unleashed, I'm so excited about this. I'm actually going to be creating a video course to go along with the book, but you can pick this up if you haven't already. And I'll put the link in the show notes there. And also, if you're a pastor that is looking for some one-on-one coaching, that is something that I offer as well. Right now I coach about 6 different pastors across the United States. So if you're interested in that, you can email me. I'll put my email there in the show notes as well. And if you're willing to sit down for a 30-minute conversation, a little consultation, I will send you a free copy of my book as a way to say thank you for sitting down and having a conversation. So I hope this is a blessing to you guys. My passion is to see our church grow, see your church grow, and see people enter into the kingdom and find a relationship with Jesus Christ. God bless you guys. We will see you next month.